Discover God's incredible plan. 7 miraculous reasons to keep faith and trust in His divine timing. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, a great famine gripped the land of Canaan, a vast desolation echoing the bitter cries of the Hebrew people. The sun's relentless gaze scorched the earth, once fruitful and lush, now a mere shadow of its former glory. For those who descended from the great patriarch Abraham, the promises of abundant harvest were slipping through their fingers like sand. Yet in the heart of Egypt, a twist of divine fate was unfolding. Joseph, the son of Jacob, was a man marked by struggle and exaltation alike, a favored son sold into slavery by his own brothers. Cast into the darkness, he clung to faith as a beacon in his trials. With an unwavering resolve, Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's troubling dreams, revealing 7 glorious years followed by 7 years of immeasurable famine. The wisdom bestowed upon him became a lifeline for his people, and soon Joseph was appointed as the second in command of Egypt, the very land where he once endured the depths of despair. As famine loomed heavy over Canaan, Joseph's heart bore the weight of his providential position. His brothers, steeped in guilt and shame, journeyed to Egypt, desperate for grain to stave off starvation. Unbeknownst to them, the brother they had cast aside now held dominion over their very sustenance. The sight of them, bowing before him, ignited a firestorm of conflicting emotions within Joseph, a tumult of anger and longing for reconciliation enveloping his heart. In their beseeching, Joseph observed the faces of the men who had betrayed him, eyes cast down, hands trembling, shadows of the past staining their features. He felt all the years of anguish, but alongside it flickered a spark of hope. Could these men, the architects of his suffering, truly be transformed? His thoughts spiraled into the echelons of divine promises, whispers of restoration echoing through his soul, affirming that God can weave good even from the most broken of beginnings. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's Word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's Word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Amidst the dimly lit throne room, Joseph wrestled with the decision resting heavily upon his heart. Would he confront them with their misdeeds, exacting retribution for his past, or would he extend a hand of grace, leading them into the light of forgiveness? The air thickened with tension as the cries of his brothers pierced through. He stood perched at the precipice of possibility, for this moment was not merely about vengeance or pardon, but the weaving together of God's sovereign plan. Joseph could sense the threads of redemption aligning, waiting for the decisive moment where faith and forgiveness could thrive. Unraveling the mystery God had intricately spun, a choice lay before him, one that held the power to reshape not only their lives, but the very legacy of the Hebrew people. Would he step into the light of reconciliation, or linger in the shadows of his resentment? As he contemplated their future, hope flickered anew, urging both brothers and spy to confront the depths of their past. The next chapter awaited with bated breath, and God's divine timing whispered that great restoration was yet to unfold. Joseph's heart raced as he beheld his brothers, those who had cast him into the pit of despair. For a moment, the memories surged forth, of his cries echoing in the darkness, of the betrayal's bitter sting. Yet amidst this tempest of emotions, the whisper of the Lord lingered in his spirit, reminding him of the covenant promises made to his forefathers, promises that would ripple through generations. "Brothers," he spoke, his voice steady and imbued with authority, "you have come here seeking grain. Tell me, where do you hail from?" His eyes bore into theirs, seeking a glimpse of the truth hidden beneath their shame. "We are but men of Canaan, come to buy food," they stammered, their eyes wide with fear. Joseph's heart clenched. He could see the weight of their guilt pressing down upon them. They did not recognize the brother they had wronged, now a ruler, adorned in Egyptian garb, with the authority to imprison or pardon. But Joseph, filled with a mixture of righteous indignation and the yearning for reconciliation, devised a plan. "You are spies," he declared, the accusation echoing against the stone walls. "You have come to observe the weakness of the land." He feigned sternness, knowing the way this would draw out their true hearts. Panic washed over his brothers as they pleaded, "No, my lord. Your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." Joseph, feeling the tumult within, turned away, masking his anguish. He knew he had to draw them into the light of truth while facing the depths of their past sins. "One of you must stay here while the others return to bring your youngest brother, for I must see whether you speak the truth," he commanded, the decree sealing their fates. They agreed, but during the harrowing days that followed, Joseph could hear their anguished confessions, how they had wronged him, how guilt had gnawed at their hearts. "Truly, we are guilty concerning our brother," they lamented to one another. God's hand stirred in their conversation, awakening remorse that had long been buried. Days passed, and the brothers returned to Canaan, their hearts heavy with hope and dread. They recounted to their father the events that had transpired, pleading for Benjamin to accompany them back to Egypt. Jacob's spirit quaked at the thought of losing another son, but the famine and desperation pressed upon him. "If it must be so, take him," he relented, the weight of providence tugging at his faith amidst the shadows. As the brothers journeyed back to Egypt with Benjamin, Joseph prepared for their return. His heart was a cacophony of emotions, both dread and desire intertwining in the sacred spaces of his soul. Would they have changed? Would they have come to realize the depth of their betrayal? When they arrived, Joseph, his heart pounding, revealed his brother's visage to them, Benjamin, the child of his own mother. "Is this your youngest brother?" he inquired, his voice thick with emotion. And then, in a moment woven by divine hands, he could no longer contain the torrent within him. He withdrew to weep, the tears cascading like a river, for he saw not just brothers but the unfolding of God's sovereign plan, the possibility of redemption fully realized. In that chamber of secrets and reconciliation, the fog of the past began to lift. Would these men embrace their new reality? Would forgiveness reign where guilt once prevailed? The air hung heavy with divine expectancy, for in the very depths of brokenness lies the heartbeat of God's miraculous purpose, waiting to be unveiled. Joseph re-entered the presence of his brothers, his heart still swelling with the weight of his tears. He turned to them once more, longing to pierce the veil of their confusion and fear. "Come near to me," he urged, and they cautiously approached, uncertainty woven into their embrace of his words. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt," he declared, the revelation falling like a thunderclap into the charged atmosphere. The brothers stood frozen, shock anchoring them to the spot. They gazed upon him with wide eyes filled with disbelief. Was this truly the brother they had forsaken? But Joseph, seeing their fear, sought to alleviate the tumult brewing in their hearts. "Do not be distressed, nor angry with yourselves for selling me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. The famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest." He spoke with the clarity of purpose, a voice resonating with God's promise manifest. As the gravity of Joseph's words unfolded like a bright tapestry before their eyes, he continued, "God sent me before you to preserve a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God." His declaration echoed in the chamber, a divine paradox wrapped within human frailty. Each brother was flooded with realization. God had been orchestrating the events of their lives, even in their darkest decisions. In that moment, Judah, who had taken the lead in their grievous plot against Joseph, stepped forward. "What can we say to my lord? What can we speak, and how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants." His heart was laid bare, the acknowledgment of their sin a contrast to the bright hope that Joseph now embodied. Joseph stepped closer, longing to embrace his brothers not just as kin but as fellow recipients of divine mercy. "Come, my brethren, approach me," he beckoned, and they closed the distance, engulfed by his warmth, an embrace that spoke of forgiveness, reconciliation, and healing. "See with your eyes, and hear with your ears all that I have spoken. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children." His words bore the promise of shelter and bounty, a direct invitation from God woven into the fabric of familial ties newly restored. As he summoned his father, Jacob, the anticipation in the air thickened with divine intent. The old man would behold his beloved son once more, the son believed to be lost. Days of joy and sorrow mingled in the promise of reunion, a picture of God's relentlessness in pursuing the lost. "And you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that you have seen," Joseph urged, a burst of zeal illuminating his spirit. "Hurry and bring my father down here." Even the name of his father became a beacon, drawing them all back into the fold of divine purpose. As Joseph's brothers journeyed with haste, the footprints they left behind marked not merely a return but a divinely woven tapestry of healing. In their hearts, hope blossomed in the soil of regret. Yet, as the sun set upon that day of reunion, the shadows whispered of the trials yet to come. The brothers had returned to their Canaanite father, a patriarch steeped in grief and longing. But within Joseph's heart, a knowing churned. God was not yet finished weaving his plans. The stage was set for a transformation far more profound than an earthly reunion. In this sacred story, God's hand guided with tender care toward uncharted territory, where dreams long forgotten would awaken again. Even now, hidden in their struggles, the promises of heaven mingled with the burdens of man, awaiting revelation, awaiting divine timing. The time had come for God's promise to unfold in ways they could not yet comprehend. What further marvels lay ahead in this divine narrative yet unspooled? As Joseph's brothers journeyed back to Canaan, the weight of their betrayal hung heavily upon them. Their hearts raced with a mixture of hope and dread, fearful of the reaction their father would have upon hearing such astonishing news. The sun dipped below the horizon as they drew near to their father's dwelling, casting long shadows that danced before them like ghosts of their past transgressions. When they arrived, they found Jacob, their father, weary and worn by years of sorrow. "Father," Judah began, his voice trembling, "we have news that will bring you great joy, and yet we bear a weight of sorrow." He paused, gathering his courage, seeking words that would soften the blow of their past actions. "Joseph is alive. He is governor over all the land of Egypt," exclaimed Benjamin, his voice breaking with emotion, as if the words had burst forth from a dam long since held back by grief. At first, Jacob's heart faltered, for he could not comprehend such a turn of fate. His ears could hardly believe the words. Joy and anguish warred within him. "It cannot be. My Joseph is gone." "See, Father, these are the words of our brother. He has sent for you, and he wishes for you to dwell in the land of Goshen." Reuben stepped forward, burdened with the resolve of repentance. "We were wrong, Father. We wronged Joseph, and our hearts have carried the shame, but God has brought him to power, that we might be saved." Jacob's heart quaked at the mention of his beloved son, and a flicker of hope ignited amidst his turmoil. The brothers shared the details of Joseph's life, recounting the wondrous grace upon their brother, painting a canvas of God's mercy and providence that had shone even in the depths of their darkest acts. In hearing this, Jacob's spirit was revived, for he saw the hand of God at work, the same God who had promised to bless his descendants. "It is enough," he declared. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Harnessing hope, Jacob prepared for the journey to Egypt with a heart full of anticipation. The family gathered their belongings, and as they began their travels, Jacob's spirit felt buoyed by the promise of reunion. In this movement, heaven rejoiced even as earthly trials awaited. As they approached Egypt, old Jacob paused in the land of Canaan and took a moment to offer sacrifices to the God of his father, Isaac, and to his father, Abraham. "O God of my fathers," he cried, "grant me favor and protection as I go forth to be reunited with my son." In a vision that night, God spoke to Jacob in a dream. "Jacob, Jacob," he called out, and Jacob answered, "Here I am." God replied, "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hands on your eyes." Awash in reverence, Jacob awoke with joy, for God had reaffirmed his covenant promise. As the family journeyed, the road became not just a passage through the desert, but a prophetic march toward destiny, each step a testament to God's unfolding plan. But as the sun rose on their arrival in Egypt, the splendor of Joseph's kingdom concealed deeper mysteries. What trials awaited them in the land of plenty? And how would God's most wondrous plan continue to unfold amidst trials yet unseen? As they entered, the spirit of divine anticipation lingered. For in every promise fulfilled, God was weaving a tapestry thick with the threads of divine intention, a story drawing them deeper into the heart of faith. Little did they know, the stage was set for events that would echo through generations, whispering of God's unfathomable love and sovereignty. Ready yourself, dear reader, for greater revelations await just beyond the horizon of this sacred journey. What divine surprises lie in the shadow of God's sovereign plan, yet to be unveiled? As Jacob and his sons approached the grand city of Egypt, the sights and sounds stirred a mixture of emotions within them. The marketplace bustled with activity, as vendors shouted to proclaim their wares and families gathered in joyous reunion amidst the well-to-do houses of the land. Yet Jacob's thoughts swirled, consumed by the anticipation of seeing Joseph once more. Upon entering the court of Pharaoh, their hearts trembled in awe of the opulence surrounding them. Golden trinkets adorned the walls, and the smell of spices filled the air, invoking visions of abundance. But Jacob's heart was set solely on the son he thought lost to him forever. He was led through chambers adorned with grandeur, drawing near to the governor who stood at the helm of a great nation. As they waited, an inner tempest raged within them, and Judah spoke, his eyes scanning the ornate surroundings. "This is the day our lives may change forever," he said, recalling the days when bitterness had consumed their hearts. "We stand before our brother, whom we harmed, and may yet know grace instead of wrath." Minutes felt like an eternity before Joseph, resplendent in his Egyptian garments, entered the room. The moment their eyes met, it was as if time stood still. Joseph's countenance beamed with recognition. "I am Joseph," he declared. "Is my father still alive?" His voice trembled not with bitterness, but with the raw emotion of love and longing. At the sight of Joseph, Jacob's heart surged with joy. "My son!" he cried, holding back tears as he rushed forward, the weight of past sorrow lifting in an instant. They embraced fiercely, the walls echoing their reunion, and Jacob's heart pounded with gratitude. All those years of grief were dissolved by the palpable presence of love forged anew in the fires of faith and loss. Yet, in that moment of joy, Joseph perceived the weight still upon his brothers. With gentle eyes he turned to them, lingering upon their faces. "Do not be troubled. It was not you who sent me here, but God. He ordained my steps to preserve life." Such words fell upon the brothers' ears like healing balm, lifting the burden of their hearts that had been heavy with guilt. "Through the famine, He is bringing us together," Joseph continued, recounting the providence that led him from the pit to the palace, unveiling the sovereignty of God that had guided his path. And through tears he spoke, "For God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance." The revelation enveloped the family in a quiet awe. It was as if the heavens opened to demonstrate God's master plan and grace. In this moment, the brothers realized that what had seemed like the unjust triumph of betrayal was transformed into an act of divine mercy. Joseph continued, "It is even now, as you see, God's design can turn our misfortunes into his victories." Jacob, still breathless with emotion, heard the unfolding truth in the depths of his spirit, how God had turned their foul deed into a herald of salvation. He reflected upon the dream God had given him, affirming that indeed they were now poised to thrive. Yet, as days turned to weeks, Jacob and his sons settled in Goshen. The tension of Egypt lingered in the air. Whispers of uncertainty lingered about Pharaoh's court, murmuring of revelations to come and trials that lay ahead. For God's plan was far from finished, and deeper mysteries beckoned them to a faith that demanded both trust and love. In this place of abundance, how might God further unveil his intentions amidst the shadows of human frailty? What did it mean for his covenant people to dwell in a land intertwined with trials, yet rich in providence? As the brothers settled into their new life, each day bore the weight of divine significance. Keep your hearts alert, for the pages of history are inked with his promise, and the unfolding of God's incredible plan has only just begun. And it came to pass, after Joseph had embraced his father and reconciled with his brothers, that he spoke to them again, saying, "Go, and tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that you have seen, and bring my father down hither." The brothers' hearts swelled with hope, for they saw that the anger that once ruled their past had been met with unyielding grace. They departed quickly from the presence of Joseph, their feet light and their spirits lifted, for they held the news of deliverance. Joseph, alive and well, and their family, destined to flourish in the land of plenty. As they journeyed back to Canaan, the chatter between them was filled with joy and disbelief, as they recounted the miracle of forgiveness they had witnessed. But as they approached their homeland, the shadow of doubt loomed over Judah. "What shall we say to our father?" he pondered aloud, his brow furrowed in concern. "Will he believe that our brother lives, and that he is the ruler of Egypt?" His words echoed their past fear, yet they had the weight of truth upon them. "We will tell him of all the glory that Joseph has shown us, and he will marvel, for his eyes shall behold the grace that has been bestowed upon our family." When they finally arrived in Beersheba, their father Jacob was tending to the flocks. At the sight of them, he paused, sensing a change in the very air they carried. Jacob noticed their faces illuminated with a radiant truth, and as they drew nearer, they spoke in unison. "Father, Joseph is alive. He is governor over all the land of Egypt." The words struck Jacob as thunder, reverberating through his soul. For a moment he wavered between disbelief and hope, yet the conviction upon their faces, and the gifts they bore from the hands of Joseph, spoke louder than their words. Jacob's heart quickened as he beheld the wagons laden with abundance, favorably sent by Joseph to escort him home. With trembling hands and tears flowing down his aged cheeks, Jacob exclaimed, "It is enough. Joseph my son is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die." In that resolve was the stirring of a promise long awaited, ignited by the faith that had been oft tested but never extinguished. And so Jacob set out with his sons, leaving the land of Canaan behind, guided by faith into the unknown. As they approached Egypt, God spoke to Jacob in the night, saying, "Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation." The divine promise reassured Jacob, for he remembered the words spoken unto Abraham his forefather. With renewed strength Jacob continued his journey, for he sensed that this was no mere relocation, but a part of a grand design, weaving his family story into the tapestry of God's covenant with Israel. As they entered into Egypt, the land stretching out before them, filled with uncertainty yet ripe with divine possibility, the sons of Jacob marveled at the providence displayed. Would the trials of this foreign land be mere shadows to overshadow their newfound grace? Joseph, upon learning of their arrival, prepared a feast and made ready the way for his family, for he understood that this was not only the restoration of his family, but an unfolding of God's sovereign purpose. And it could be seen, even in the distance, the plans of God intertwined with human frailty, setting the stage for a people to endure in faith and grow in spirit, for his promises extend far beyond the immediate horizons of the present moment. Nevertheless, a stirring undercurrent, an ominous whisper within the courts of Egypt assured them that the trials were yet to come. But behold, God had orchestrated a mighty deliverance, and the seeds of a great destiny were being sown in the soil of their new home. Thus the story progresses, unveiling a rich promise entangled in adversity, awaiting to shine the light of redemption across not only their lives, but all generations to come. The roots of a covenant people were being nurtured, even amidst a land that could easily forget their legacy. The will of God remained steadfast. They knew the journey had only just begun. What more awaited them in this land of uncertainty and opportunity? Would they cling to the truth that God remains sovereign even amidst the shadows? The echoes of faith rang through the air, whispering the divine mysteries that beckoned them forward into the depths of his unfathomable plan. And Joseph went forth to meet his father, and he prepared a chariot and his brethren, who had walked in weariness over the long stretch of sand and earth. When Jacob beheld the sight of his son, tears of joy filled his eyes, and he embraced Joseph, the embraced now becoming one of the great illustrations of reconciliation destined to echo through future generations. "Now let me die," Jacob said, "for I have seen your face, and you are yet alive." His voice trembled as he spoke those words, laden with the weight of years lost and the pain of what might have been. Joseph replied, "Do not fear, my father. Live and declare the wondrous works of the Lord, for the land of Egypt will feed us all. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, for I will place you there to flourish as the blessings of the Almighty overflow upon you." Thus he led Jacob and the others to the best of the land, where they could thrive within the embrace of prosperity. And so, under the care of Joseph, the family of Jacob settled in Egypt, their hearts full of hope, yet deep within them, the uncertain echoes of the past and counsels of God surged with promise and mystery. But it came to pass, as the years unfolded, that the Pharaoh observed the fruits of Jacob's family. He saw their growing multitude, and the favor of Joseph was evident. "Who are these people?" asked the Pharaoh, his heart stirred with curiosity. Joseph, with wisdom seated by years of trial and divine insight, answered, "These are the patriarchs of Israel, whom God has destined for greatness." Yet the growing numbers of Israel's sons brought about a shadow of unease amongst the Egyptians. "What if they rise against us?" Some whispered behind closed doors, and others began to cast wary eyes upon the family of Jacob. The Pharaoh, caught between fear and the favor he bore toward Joseph, called together his wise men, saying, "How shall we secure our land against this increasing people?" God, ever watchful over his covenant, knew what lay ahead, a lingering shadow cast by the spirit of fear. He revealed his plan through the unseen, speaking of the trials that would forge a nation through fire and deliverance. Joseph, discerning the strategies of the heart, felt a heaviness upon his spirit. The visions of the night whispered of a suffering yet to come, shadows that would touch his family in profound ways. Days turned into years, and the children of Israel multiplied exceedingly. Their hearts intertwined with the soil of Egypt, yet their spirits whispered of a greater calling, a promise of deliverance that would come from the hand of God. As darkness brewed around them, the figures of their past began to fade, but the promises of God remained alive, igniting a flame of faith amidst their gatherings. "Speak, O Lord," Joseph would say to his brothers, "for I sense divine purpose within the trials of our journey." And in those moments they would gather and share dream interpretations and stories of their father, learning that amidst adversity, the faith of a covenant people would rise. Thus the days fell upon them like dust, but the legacy of Abraham and Isaac echoed through their hearts, for Jacob had instilled in them a reverent fear of the Lord. With whispers of the truth, they were reminded that though hardship and bondage awaited, God's divine hand was not absent. It was preparing a way in the wilderness, instilling resilience, shaping his chosen heritage. As they gathered one last time under a starry sky, Joseph looked upon the faces of his kin, uncertain yet steadfast. "Fear not the journey ahead, for the Lord who walked with our ancestors walks with us still," he proclaimed. "He shall not forsake his people, and we will witness the unfolding of his grand design." But one question pressed upon their hearts, lingering like the sweet fragrance of blooming lilies in the deafening silence. What would become of them in the land that bore witness to both grace and trial? What lies ahead in the tapestry of God's magnificent plan, woven through every trial and triumph of his chosen people? And it came to pass in those days that a new Pharaoh arose over Egypt, who knew not Joseph. His heart was hardened to the legacy that had been forged by the hand of God through Joseph's wisdom and leadership. With eyes clouded by fear and suspicion, he observed the growing multitude of the Hebrews, and his heart was filled with dread. "Let us deal shrewdly with them," the Pharaoh commanded his people, "lest they multiply, and it come to pass that, when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies, and fight against us." So he set taskmasters over them to afflict them with burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. The Egyptians were in terror of the children of Israel, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. Yet in their affliction a cry arose unto God, a cry of lament, yet also of faith. For in the midst of their labor, the remembrance of the covenant promises passed down from Abraham and Isaac stirred their hearts. As a result of their harsh treatment, the childbearing of the Hebrew women flourished in strength and resilience. It was during this anguish that a woman from the tribe of Levi conceived and bore a son, a child pleasing to God. She saw that he was beautiful and hid him for 3 months, defying the decrees of Pharaoh. And when she could no longer hide him, she wove a basket with bulrushes, coated it with slime and pitch, and placed him therein, setting him among the reeds by the river's bank. And his sister stood afar off, to wit what would happen to him. For even amidst the trial and turmoil, a divine plan laid in wait. The child, whom they named Moses, floated into the embrace of the very waters that were to claim the lives of many. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to the river and spied the basket. She opened it, and behold, a baby wept. Her heart was moved with compassion, and she said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Thus the Lord's hand was upon the child, and his intention became manifest in the heart of a princess. She took him in, raising him in the palace, thus orchestrating a means of protection for the one who would lead his people out of bondage. Moses grew in wisdom and stature, and the seed of the calling rested upon him quietly, deep within his spirit, unknown to him as yet. As he beheld the burdens of his people, an anger stirred within him. It was then that he made a choice, confronting a taskmaster who afflicted a Hebrew, and in the heat of his passion, he struck him down. Yet whilst he sought to bring deliverance, the ground beneath his feet trembled with consequences not yet revealed. Fearful for his life, he fled into the wilderness, unaware that the very desert he entered would become a school for the soul prepared to lead a nation. The children of Israel continued under the weight of their toil, their cries ascending like incense unto the heavens, steady as the rhythm of the Nile. God heard their groaning, and his thoughts turned toward his covenant, stretching across generations, promising deliverance. But what divine intervention awaited in the stillness? What plans lay concealed in the shadows, intricately woven into the fabric of their story, promising hope and restoration. The hearts of a people, burdened yet steadfast, anticipated the hour when God's purpose would be revealed through one man, designed to lead them not just from physical captivity, but from a greater darkness into which they would emerge as the children of his light. Now Moses, having fled from the face of Pharaoh, found himself in the land of Midian. As he sat by a well, weary from his journey, the daughters of the priest of Midian came to draw water for their father's flocks. Surprised by the sight of the daughters being troubled by shepherds who would drive them away, Moses rose to their defense and assisted them, watering their sheep. When they returned to their father, Reuel, he asked, "How is it that ye are come so soon today?" They answered, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and drew water for us." Then Reuel said, "And where is he? Why is it that you have left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread." Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah his daughter to be his wife. Thus did the life of Moses take root in a foreign land, and in the midst of obscurity he found solace among the shepherds. And it came to pass in the fullness of time that she bore him a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a stranger in a strange land." Days turned into years, and Moses tended to the flocks, raising his family while the cries of his brethren echoed in the shadows of Egypt. Meanwhile, back in the land of their bondage, the children of Israel mourned under the relentless hand of their oppressors. Their cries ascended like smoke, pleading for deliverance. The weight of their burden pressed heavily upon them, yet in their desperation they remembered the God of their ancestors, the God who made a covenant with Abraham, promising that his seed would be as numerous as the stars. Now God heard their cries, and his heart was stirred. He looked upon them with compassion and said to himself, "I have indeed seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows." As Moses shepherded the flock of Jethro, he led them to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, Horeb. There, amidst the rugged cliffs and the whispering winds, he encountered a sight like no other. A bush burned with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. Moses turned aside to see this great sight. As he approached, the voice of the Lord called unto him from the midst of the bush, saying, "Moses, Moses." And he answered, "Here am I." God said, "Draw not nigh hither. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground." In that moment the veil between heaven and earth was lifted, and all of Moses' past anguish, his efforts of reprisal, and his years of quiet waiting were gathered into the providential will of God. He was now called to be the vessel of divine deliverance. "Come now, therefore," God commanded, "and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." As the words settled upon Moses, he was filled with a sense of holy dread. "Who am I," he quivered, "that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt?" But God responded with assurance, "Certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve God upon this mountain." Thus began the unfolding of a divine plan, an extraordinary sequence set in motion that would lead a people from slavery into a promise, from the shadow of death into the light of freedom. Little did Moses know that what loomed before him was not merely a struggle against flesh and blood, but a testament to the redemptive power of God, a clash of divine will against human stubbornness that would echo through the ages. What would come of such confrontation? The stage was set, and the destiny of nations hung in the balance, awaiting the hour when God's promise to deliver would burst forth in all its glory. And as the days passed, the air thick with anticipation, Moses wrestled with the enormity of his calling. With doubts and fears crowding his heart, he journeyed back to Egypt, burdened with the weight of destiny. The Lord had spoken. Anxiety coursed through him, yet he was fueled by the relentless call of God. "I will stand with you, my son. the Creator assured, promising his presence as an anchor in the tempest of uncertainty. As Moses entered the land of Egypt, echoes of his past reverberated in his mind. The memory of fleeing in fear now met with a determined heartbeat of purpose. He stood before Pharaoh, the very face of his past oppression, the figure whom he must confront to deliver his people. "Let my people go," he proclaimed, his voice echoing with prophetic authority, filled with divine resolve. But Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, steeped in pride and disbelief. "Who is the Lord that I should obey him?" he scoffed, dismissing the plea that danced upon the strands of faith woven through Israel's lineage. With each encounter, Moses witnessed the oppressive reign tighten its grip upon the people he loved. Yet God intervened, sending plagues upon the land, each a reminder of his sovereignty and faithfulness, sparking a flicker of hope amidst despair. With every plague, the cries of the oppressed surged like a tidal wave, beckoning Pharaoh towards the truth of God's unwavering love for his people. "I shall bring forth wonders, and the world shall know my name," the Lord declared, revealing his righteousness through the chaos. It was through the pain and heartbreak that redemption began to emerge, a lesson written upon the scroll of history that echoed the hearts of generations to come. Finally, the night came when the curse of death swept through the land, marking the firstborn of every house. But God's people were shielded by the blood of the Lamb, their obedience to his command ushering in a divine protection so profound that it would forever alter their destiny. It was on this night that the chains of bondage would shatter, and Israel would walk into the dawn of a new day. As the Israelites prepared for their exodus, the very air palpably pulsed with expectation. Under a veil of divine protection, they left the gates of Egypt, their hearts poised between sorrow and hope. "We are free," they proclaimed, the joy mingling with the tears of their past loss. Their journey was not merely from physical captivity, but a spiritual awakening, the promise of a land flowing with milk and honey beckoning them toward a future divine and bright. And as they traversed the wilderness, the Lord led them with a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night, a visible reminder of his presence guiding their steps. Their faith, like a newborn flame, flickered in each heart, ignited by the stirring of divine remembrance. Yet amidst the uncertain terrains, trials ensued, testing their strength. "Is the Lord among us or not?" they grumbled. Fear began to whisper doubts into their spirits, just as it often does among men. But God would meet them, emerging from the cloud to speak forth tenderly. "Fear not, for I have called you by name," he reassured them. The covenant promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob surged forth through Moses and reverberated in the hearts of the people. "I will be your God. You will be my people." In that longing journey, they overcame hunger as manna fell from heaven, a daily provision that echoed the fidelity of their Creator. And when thirst gripped their throats, water gushed forth from the rock, each miracle unveiling the richness of God's grace, binding their collective hearts as a nation called by his name. Finally, they arrived at Sinai, trembling at the foot of the mountain as the voice of the Lord spoke like rolling thunder, imparting his laws and commands. A blueprint not only for a people but for future generations yearning for holiness. The tablets of stone bore his sacred words, etched with divine authority, and the people trembled, saying, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do." Thus, in a sacred act of worship, they entered into a covenant with God, a people reshaped, engraved in the annals of his memory forever. They were not merely delivered from Egypt. They were transformed into a nation dedicated to living out his righteousness, each heartbeat echoing the rhythm of faith. As the sun set upon the horizon of Sinai, illuminating the tents of Israel, they began to understand this journey was never about the destination alone, but the divine transformation of their very hearts. "What day is it?" they would ask, for each dawn brought renewed purpose, a sacred reminder of their identity rooted in the God who saves and redeems. And through trials still yet to come, God would remain a faithful shepherd, leading them with a firm hand, establishing a legacy woven in prayerful trust. It was settled in the heavens. His plan stood firm as a rock, and his love forever showered gently upon his people, igniting the flame of hope for generations yet unborn. Thus, dear reader, take heed of this sacred story. The divine blueprint of redemption reveals God's incredible love and faithfulness, and we, too, are woven into this tapestry. Now, I invite you to join this journey of faith. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories that will strengthen your faith. Leave a like now to help spread God's Word through the algorithm. Your thumbs up matters. Comment below and share your reflections on how this extraordinary journey has impacted your faith. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. You need to connect with God's Word as we continue to unveil His miraculous plans. Let us be vessels that spread the hope of redemption and the glorious light of His promise.